worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You freed every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You've been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things, and I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. God, you do great things.
Good morning! I am Mariela and I'm so happy you are here with us today. If you are at Lightridge with us, welcome! And I'm so glad you are joining us in person. And if you are with us online, I'm also so happy you are watching with us. Say hello in the chat. Our online hosts are excited to chat with you. We at Dallas want to thank you so much for your generous giving. Your giving allows our church to care for others, to live out our church's vision of God's love throughout the Dallas area and even beyond. So thank you. And speaking of giving, we are super excited to start serving coffee again on Sunday mornings during church. We have a very specific way you can help us make the coffee and connection spot in our lobby a reality. We have an Amazon wish list with some necessary items on it that we need, like Keurigs, coffee cups, etc. This list is in our app, so if you haven't already, download our Dallas Church mobile app and it will be on the first page. If you're sort of new here, brand new, or if you're just like hanging out and trying new wine, this is for you. We've been meeting new people here at Dallas over the last few weeks, and we love to hang out and chat. So you're invited this evening to Brad and Amy's home. If you are new and want to learn more about our church, want to connect with new people, meet a few of our team leaders, if you have been at Dallas for a while and want to just watch football with Brad, you are invited to the Russells today from 5 to 6:30. It's super casual and you can come and go as you like. We just ask that you RSVP on our app. Thank you, Dallas. Happy Sunday.
Hey, another big welcome to you. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're watching from. And if you're watching live, take a moment to say hi and tell us where you're watching from. That really encourages the other people who are watching. They don't feel like they're watching alone. Okay, so many of you know that I started a film festival 10 years ago. Many at Dulles Church volunteer every October in the festival. It just happened a few weeks ago. And if you don't know what it is, we'll explain the details of it to you later. But we started a film festival that rather than just screening films that entertain people, where people come to watch stories, we created a festival where the audience is challenged and inspired to actually be part of a real life story that we're creating. Always to better the lives of children who are battling an illness, or children in the foster care system. At-risk children is who we're attempting to help every year through the film festival. So we have occasional celebrities who come to the film festival, and this is kind of a double-edged sword for me personally. On the one hand, Hollywood is maybe the most egocentric, like self-serving culture that there is. I would say Washington, D.C., is a close second, maybe. But on the other hand, when a celebrity does come from time to time, it helps drive awareness. Our ticket sales go up. We give 100% of our box office away to helping these children. And so it helps ticket sales. And we always try to tell the celebrity who's going to come for a Q&A or for their film screening what we're really about. We don't use VIP in our festival culture in regard to a celebrity. VIP designates the children that we're helping, like the most important people to us, our most cherished audience, or who we call VIPs. And so we just explain the vision of the festival. And it usually is a good thing. Well, about 3 or 4 years ago, I'm going to try to keep this vague, we had a pretty well-known celebrity. Most people would recognize their face or their name, coming with a DC premiere. It was the first time this film was going to screen anywhere in the DC metro area. It had just been picked up, I think, by Apple TV or HBO. And so this was a big deal on a Friday night screening. And a month out, we told the manager, hey, please pass this on. Make sure that the person you work for who's joining us understands why this festival is so unique. We're inviting Washingtonians to come together and do something for the sake of others. That's really what this is about. And your boss, who you work for, is going to be helping us sell tickets in order to do good for many, many children. Well, we never got a response. And about a month later, the week of the festival, was about 4 or 5 days before the festival and before this person's going to arrive at Dulles, we get an email from their agent or manager specifying a list, quite a long list, 6 or 7 items of requirements that this person has that we need to meet for their experience here at our festival. And I kid you not, we get halfway through the first one. The person who took this phone call, it was an email and then a follow-up call. The person on our team who's relaying this to me in a team meeting, Brad, by the way, yesterday we had this email come and then a follow-up phone call, that this person must have as the interior temperature of the car that picks them up at Dulles and the temperature that's maintained throughout their drive to the hotel at 71 degrees. And that's all I needed to hear to know that I was already battling some emotion about this. And our team member said, oh, wait, the list gets better. And I just remember the one that really stands out to me the most is that in the green room, waiting for them in our green room, and we didn't even tell these people that we don't really have a green room, but in our green room must be honeydew, not cantaloupe, but honeydew, and we needed to ensure that the honeydew was not sliced, but was in cubes. And I kid you not, this was in email, and then that was stressed to us over the telephone. And then over the telephone, I haven't said the word telephone in like 2 decades. And then something on the list, a specific brand of sparkling water, those kinds of things. And I had so much emotion about this. I was this close. I told the team, I think I'm going to email back and say, we're going to screen the film on Friday night, but we no longer need your boss to participate or join us for our festival. And I decided, I'm going to sleep on this. I want to just make sure I'm not responding out of emotion. And so the next day, we decided, let's try one more time. Let's tell them what our festival's about. This is about bringing Washingtonians together, people from Northern Virginia together, to stop necessarily thinking about our own lives for a little bit, to think about the plight and the situation of these kids. We never got a response back. And then our driver, whoever it was who picked up the celebrity, probably in like a Honda Pilot or something, drives them to the theater. And then by the time I met this person and was able to relay again or attempt again to relay the vision that, hey, we're trying to, in our busy lives and all of our jobs here, come together for this festival. Yeah, we're excited to see the story on the screen, but we also are really inviting our audiences to be part of a story, to help us create a story of hope for kids in the area. And this person's response was so sincere. And they just said, listen, I really haven't been in a screening ever where that's really the focus. And then they later got up on stage and said something to the audience. And they were doing this, like put their hand on their heart, like, this has genuinely moved me. Like, I want to be in this kind of environment more. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. And it really gave me hope that the most extreme cases of thinking about self, it's not too late. It's not too late for any of us to really adopt what I believe ultimately heals this world. What heals this world, what politics will never heal. What we argue and debate and our loud opinions will never really solve. The antidote, the healing balm that Jesus gives us to heal this planet, I believe is accessible to anybody and everybody. So I want to just say that, the world has always had selfishness. Of course, it goes without saying. There's always been pride. In fact, that's what broke this world. Scripture tells us that humanity deciding to elevate our own interest, our own needs, our own wants ahead of God's, Scripture calls that sin. That is what broke the world. That's why we have pain and hurt today, and the world is incomplete and not what God fully intended it to be. That's why we are not fully what God intended you and I to be. Just struggling in our own brokenness, our own pain, our own disappointments, our own loneliness, our own regrets or guilt at times. And so Jesus brings us, I think, particularly into our generation. I don't know if this is true or not, but what I want to say is, as selfish as the world has always been, and there's always been pride, I don't know that there's ever been a generation that has been so self-elevating and self-protective and narcissistic. I've heard a couple times in the last year or so that narcissism is a word that's kind of being overused today. And how ironic is that? That we live in an era where the word narcissism is maybe being overused to describe our culture or our generation. And in my own personal experience, with so many conversations, I can't even count how many dinners and lunches and coffees and counseling about marriage and parenting, and people just struggling in their own inner world. And we've all had that, all of us. as humans, have that, some version of those experiences. In all the conversations where I have with people, regardless of how much money they make or how successful they've been, every person comes to places in their life where they're alone, or they're hurting, or they can't shake the shame that they carry, or the way they've been betrayed. What I have found plagues us as humans more than anything else is our elevating or promoting ourselves ahead of, so much so that we no longer have the ability to feel the pain or struggle or disappointment or isolation of someone else. And so Erwin has written in this book, The Genius of Jesus, I believe the best chapter I've read in any book. This is Erwin McManus's book, The Genius of Jesus. That's what this series is based on. We're going through a few parts of this book that really stand out to me. He wrote what I think is the most profound chapter of any book that I've read in recent memory, the last couple of years at least, called The Genius of Empathy. Now, I want to talk about what empathy is first. And I want to compare it to pity and sympathy. So pity can be a sincere emotion, but pity is always feeling sorry for someone while looking down on them. It's almost as if I feel sorry for them because they are less than my status. It would be like looking out at someone who's experiencing homelessness and feeling pity for them because they don't have what you have. They don't have what I have. Or someone who's struggling with an illness. And, I feel bad for them. They're not healthy like I am. Sympathy is another emotion altogether. Sympathy is another. It can be a sincere emotion. But sympathy is when you feel bad for someone, you feel sad for someone. Often we say the words, I'm sorry for your loss, where we don't necessarily feel that person's pain, but we can identify with the fact that they're struggling because we've had some sort of struggle in our lives. We know what it is to hurt. We know what it is to suffer in some way, maybe not the way they're suffering. So sympathy is the ability to say, I can understand that you're struggling, or I can understand that you're hurting. Empathy is on a whole different level. Empathy is when we understand someone's struggle or isolation or pain or betrayal, their hurt, their fear, in a way where it affects us. Empathy is taking on the pain or hurt of someone else, so much so that we take action. Empathy is taking on someone's circumstance, their struggle, their own emotion, so much so that it moves us to take action. Now I want to read this from Erwin's book here. Sorry, I've just lost my way here. I want to make this point. That it's like trying to live and build. A way to describe living life apart from empathy being a part of your everyday life, is sort of like trying to live life or thrive in some way, like building a company or leading an organization or starting a family. Just regular life, doing these kinds of things in life and putting everything into it without breathing oxygen. I mean, that we have trouble even understanding that. That doesn't make sense to us. We are choked out. We are choked by our own self-interest and needs and focused on self when we lack the ability in the margin of our lives, in the capacity of our lives, to feel the pain or hurt or struggle of someone else. It actually prevents us from living fully. That's how we were designed. We were designed and made to be able to be empaths, to be empathetic for our neighbor or someone else. And I believe we live in a generation where we're so self-focused, we're so worried about getting through our day, the job stress that we're dealing with. We just can barely get home to feed ourselves dinner or feed our kids dinner. It's like we're in this survival mode. And I believe the antidote to getting ourselves out of survival mode is an intentional focus, a lifestyle of practicing mentally and spiritually, through prayer, asking God, work into me the hurt and struggle and pain of others where I can become an actual active encourager in their lives. Okay, I want to read what Erwin says here about empathy. Compassion, sincere compassion moves us to action. Empathy moves you and me to understanding. Empathy is the deepest level of knowing. You know, we live in a world today where knowledge is so elevated as the ultimate. I mean, we have parents. I talk to parents regularly who believe, they actually believe, this is a part of our culture today, where parents believe the most important thing in the life of their child is the knowledge that they take on, what they learn in terms of information. And Erwin spends a much larger part of this chapter drawing this out. But he says, empathy is the deepest level of knowing. Empathy is more than simply feeling for what someone is going through. Empathy is the ability to stand in someone else's place and see the world from their vantage point. Empathy is the vicarious transference of another person's internal world into your internal world. Empathy, at its most profound engagement, creates a mystical connection between people. It's the highest form of consciousness. Where there is empathy, there is no separation. Empathy is how love communicates. Now, Jesus consistently was moved by so much compassion that he was always acting on his compassion. And Jesus put this in front of his disciples, not just the 12 and not just the 120 church leaders in Jerusalem, and not just the hundreds and thousands that called themselves eventually disciples of Jesus, but to you and me. His ultimate call in his consistent teaching, page after page, story after story, is that love lived out, love not being a sentiment that we express even verbally, so much as that love is something we act out. Love is something that we offer to, that we share with someone else. There's so many stories we could read. I mean, so many examples in the life of Jesus we could focus on. I want to look at one in Mark chapter 6, where Jesus feeds 5,000 people. Now, we find at the end of the story, because of the way census counts were done in Jesus' day, this has been true in so much of world history until very recently, it was the men who were counted. And we find out at the end of this story, it was 5,000 men. So probably, based on just general average, this is about 15,000 people who Jesus had been teaching, who'd been following Jesus from town to town on one side of the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus gets into a boat with his disciples and said, hey, let's go to another town. There's more need. I want to go meet needs in this other town. Well, this crowd that had just been with Jesus, and we're talking about thousands, they don't have access to boats and didn't have the resourcing. They essentially run is what they did around probably the south end of the Sea of Galilee, and met Jesus on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. They just couldn't get enough of what Jesus was, not just the miracles he was performing, but the words that were coming out of his mouth. And so that's the context here. And Jesus has now been teaching them and others in this new town for a long part of a day. This is in Mark 6, verse 35. By this time, it was late in the day, so his disciples came to Jesus, saying, this is a remote place, and it's already very late. Send the people home, Jesus. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. They're saying, man, these people must be famished. They've been with us on one side of the Sea of Galilee. They've been racing around trying to follow you. Nobody has stopped to eat. And it's late in the day, obviously. They haven't had lunch. It's dinner time. It's past dinner. But Jesus answered to his 12 disciples, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than a half of a year's wages, with all of these people. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to these people to eat? Jesus replies, how many loaves of bread do you have? Go and see. When they found out, they said, there's 5 loaves and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups in hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, Jesus looks up to heaven. He gave thanks and he broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was about 5,000. This is a remarkable story that shows us how Jesus was not going to allow the disciples to abdicate their responsibility or even accept their recommendation. You know, the disciples had somewhere between pity or sympathy on these people. They must be hungry. Wow, let's send them away. Jesus wasn't going to allow the disciples to give up their responsibility as followers of him. He's teaching them, and he's teaching you and me as followers of Jesus. We can't just say, oh, wow, these people over here, man, let's just pray for them. Sometimes sincere, concentrated prayer is exactly what people need. And sometimes that's all we can offer. But a lot of times our escape, our way out of being more involved is to say, I'm going to pray for them. And Jesus, time and time again, and he does it here, basically says to the disciples, when you follow me, when you seriously follow me, when you're not just attending church once in a while, or you're not just trying to be religious, or you're trying to clean up your life, or make yourselves not feel guilty anymore in front of God, which it doesn't work that way anyway with God as we learn his grace. When we're sincerely following the way of Jesus, he says, I just can't let you abdicate your responsibility. You meet this need. You figure out how to feed them. Jesus said, not Jesus, Erwin McManus says here in this chapter, The Genius of Empathy, instead of accepting the disciples' recommendation, which would have allowed them a way out of the responsibility of caring for the well-being of the multitudes, he instead instructed them to find a way to feed the crowd. In this moment, Jesus was not only feeding the hungry, he was teaching his disciples a new mindset. Jesus was moved by compassion. When we say moved by compassion, we sometimes refer to feeling emotional, or maybe we get a little bit of, misty-eyed when we feel something about another. But being moved by compassion means we're moved to action. Jesus was moved by compassion while his disciples were motivated by convenience. And man, I'm telling you, we live busy lives. We have such, hard jobs. I know so many people who have very, very difficult, challenging projects on their plates right now at work, of course. But we have never lived, humanity has never lived ever an era or a generation like we are right now by convenience, or with so much convenience. I want to read just a couple sections here before we wrap up. And I am actually near the end here. This is just so compelling to me. Again, such a profound chapter, and I struggled, which pieces to pull out. I wanted to I actually considered reading the whole chapter today, just as our message. This is a section here where Erwin says, there is so much meaning in the decision for God to become one of us. Why would God become human? Why would he require this kind of intimacy with his creation? What compelled God to come so near to us that he could not remain at a distance? What would compel God to leave the safety of heaven and enter the violence of earth? You cannot carry the weight of the world from a distance. That's essentially the answer. It is here where we find the most beautiful glimpse of the genius of Jesus. For there to be empathy, there must be incarnation. Incarnation is the Greek word incarnate, to enter flesh, to become flesh. Empathy takes the heart of another person and puts it inside your own soul. Their story becomes your story. Their burden becomes your burdens. Their pain becomes your pain. You do not simply feel for them or feel with them. Their feelings become your own. Throughout his life, Jesus connected to the human experience at the deepest level. We see the tenderness and playfulness of Jesus when he allows himself to be surrounded by children. We see his strength and even his anger when he drives out the corrupt money changers from the temple. He experiences the pain of betrayal when Judas sells him out to his enemies, and when his trusted friend Peter denies him 3 times in his hour of greatest need. At Gethsemane, Jesus struggles with anguish over his future, begging his Father for any other way forward than the one he must face on the cross. At the end, he experiences the pain of feeling alone and the abandonment of this world, crying out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The only way you can fully empathize with the poor is to have been poor. The only way you can fully understand the isolation of being an outsider in this world is to become an outsider. For Jesus, the only way to fully understand the full weight of our inner turmoil and the suffocating effect of guilt and shame was to bear it all upon himself. All right, I've got this one thought here that I just want to kind of put in front of you, and I actually shared this with a couple film festival audiences a few weeks ago. Is it possible that we expend so much emotional energy today, especially today in America, especially here in our country? Is it possible we expend so much emotional energy on our political opinions, on our personal opinions, maybe even just our own personal wants or needs, that there's no emotional capacity left for empathy? Are we so determined to argue with those who see the world differently than we do politically, that at the end of the week, the end of the day, we just have nothing left? There's no juice left in us. Our batteries are depleted when it comes to what others need, the energy, the intentionality we need to be able to share in the healing and the hope giving and being a good friend. Driving to somebody's house at night when they just need a friend to talk to. Calling somebody and saying, hey, we're going to lunch. We're going to talk this out together. You're not alone in this. Like, are we so depleted because we're expending our energy on the priorities that matter to me, that matter to us, making sure we argue out our opinion, that there's nothing left? This is the last little section I'm going to read here in Urban's book before we close. Perhaps the empathy of Jesus can be best summarized by his invitation, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." But this is more than an invitation to be understood and loved by God. It is an invitation to understand and love like God. It is an invitation to become a healer of humanity's deepest wounds. It is here that we find the true power of empathy, the power to carry the burdens others cannot carry on their own. You may not be able to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, but perhaps you can carry the weight of someone's burden long enough for them to regain their strength. In my life experience, Urban says, I have found that perhaps the greatest gift you can give another human being is the gift of being understood. When no one understands you, you are truly alone in the world. But when someone understands you, it makes an incredible difference. When we know we're not alone, we can bear almost any hardship, survive almost any wounding, overcome almost any pain or sorrow. The power of the empath is that you stand with people in their pain, in their grief, in their fear, in their doubt. You weep when they weep. You laugh when they laugh. You are in rhythm with their soul because you know them as you know yourself. And so here's how I wrap up today. Something that our core leaders, our team leaders at church, we've been talking about here in the last couple months as we come out of COVID, and our church has really been regathering, and we're just regathering energy and prioritizing what really matters. Are we trying to impress people? Are we trying to put on a really great presentation on stage on Sunday mornings? I mean, the building we're in at Lightridge is beautiful. It's probably going to win architectural awards. People who come in are like, wow, this doesn't feel like a high school. And if we're not careful, we can be trying to just impress people with our music and how we present what we want to do as a church. And of course, that's never really mattered to us. We value excellence. We want to do things well, of course. But what matters to us, and what we've said here coming into the fall as a group of team leaders, is We want to be truly living out the love of Jesus for at least one person. Each of us as individuals living out the love that we wish we had time for and we wish we could share with many, many more. We wish we could solve all the problems of the world if that was even possible. Instead of being overwhelmed with all the needs and all the cares and concerns of our neighbors and people all around us, what if we identified one person right now? What if we could do for one person what we wish we could do for many? And so we've been asking ourselves as team leaders, who's our one? Who's your one? Maybe one or two. And I'm just going to give you a moment here. And this is maybe a little awkward watching online to have silence, but I'm just going to stop and give us a moment. And I'm going to ask that question, and it's really a prayerful question. You don't always have to close your eyes and say something to the Father first before you're actually prayerfully saying, who is my one? Who should my one person be right now? God, who is it? Bring to mind. Help me to settle on somebody in my life that you want me to have margin for. And so I'm just going to give a moment for you to ask that question. Who is it? Who right now should be my one? And I'm going to follow it with this. Regardless of how busy you are, regardless of how challenging parenting is, and parenting is one of the greatest challenges any human can ever endure. Amy and I say that from experience. Regardless of what challenges you're facing at work, what your life situation is, who is the person that you're going to actually go to? Who's the person you're going to take something to? Who's the person you're going to actually call and say something to or tell a story to? Who are you going to have lunch with? And is this someone that you're going to care for regularly? Let's just say at least once a week you're going to reach out to check on them or to tell them you miss them or, hey, how's the thing at work going? Listen, this may seem like some simple little exercise that I'm suggesting here at the end. This is how the world has changed. This is how we allow Jesus to use us as a conduit of his love to what actually eventually heals this planet. How the love of Jesus, the power of Jesus is worked through us, where we tell our stories, our pain. We share in the hurt and struggle of someone else because we've struggled. And we allow their hurt and struggle to become so much our own, we can't keep the phone down. We can't not call them. We can't drive to go check on them, or we can't not have lunch with them. So God, I pray that you give us strength and you give us the margin. We have the margin, whether we believe it or not, to be the empath, to be the person of empathy who truly feels and takes on the struggle or the loneliness or the discouragement or depression or just pain of someone's past. Help us, God, to truly live life, to be the encourager, the hope giver, the life giver, the friend that someone needs to experience your love. Dulles family, I love you so much. Hey, if you're in the Dulles area today, this evening from 5 to 6:30, Amy and I are hosting a wine and cheese at our house. It's just super casual. It's a time to hang out and get to know the church a little better, get to know us a little better. We'd love to have you. Try to RSVP if you can through our Dulles app today. I love you guys. I can't wait to do part 3 with you next weekend.